Jai Prabhuji. Hello everybody and welcome to our course where we are exploring and discussing about the book of Prabhuji, Kundalini Yoga, The Power is in You. This is the book for whoever didn't see it yet. And my name is Radha Devi. I am a monastic disciple from the Ramakrishnananda order. And together with my spiritual brothers and sisters, we are sharing our thoughts, our feelings, and what's happening in this meeting with an enlightened being like Prabhuji. We discuss his writings, his different video conferences, and also many times we share in regards to the blessed opportunities that we have when there is darshans. So in this occasion, I would like us to continue deepening into the topic that we started in our previous class. We started to familiarize ourselves with the fourth center, which is the Anahata Chakra, the center of the heart or the center of love. And that was the topic that we discussed. We started to understand about the definition of love, and we took the light that Prabhuji sheds in regards to this huge topic, and we started to understand in the way that he's explaining why when we ask different people in regards to the definition of love is so different. I don't know if it happened to you. When you ask to your grandfather, he says love is passion. When you ask to your mother, she says love is about sacrifice. When you ask your partners or by the relationship you have with him or her, you understand it's more related to sex. And then he comes to tell us that it happens like this because when we're speaking about the definition of love, we are entering the platform of the subjective. And what does that mean? It means that the definition is more related to the person that is defining whatever we want to define. In this case is love, than to the definition itself. And this is why we're brought, when we explain the different levels that we find in the book Bhakti Yoga, then it's because it's expressing the level of awareness of the person, the level of consciousness, the state in the different stages of development. So it happens also when we brought all these examples in regards to happiness. And I remember also in the beginning of our classes when we spoke about prana, because it's also something related to the subjective platform, then there is no consensus in this definition, and the definition itself, it's going to express more about the person, the subject that is defining it, than about the definition itself. So we brought these different levels. There is the physical level, which is the most basic level, and here love is expressed with sex. Then you have the emotional, and as its name says, its origin is the emotions. So it's something transient like this, and at any moment it can become hate. Why it can become hate? This is a very interesting question. And in this level, the love, it's actually attachment. And in the other side of attachment, you have hate. So as we just saw, when we have attachment, it can become hate, and the opposite too. There are this can happen that someone hates another person, and then it can turn and become attachment. But the origin itself is the fact that it's coming from an emotion, and it's something that is not permanent. It's something that comes and goes. We all know many times how we can feel very excited about something, and the minute after we feel disappointed, we feel sad. This is something that changes very much. So this is why also in this level of love, it's going to be also very transient. It's something that is not permanent. Then we have the intellectual, which comes from this part of the mind that we express, that the name is the buddhi. And if we translate this word, is intellect. So this specific part of the mind, the role of it is to judge, is to discriminate different things. So in this same way, it's going to translate what love is. So if it's discriminating, is judging different things. So in this type of love, we're going to have more a transactional love. It's going to be more related to a business, because it's what we call reciprocal love. I'm going to give you as much as you give me. If you give me little, I'm going to give you back little. I'm going to give you the same amount. I'm always going to be in this state where I'm judging and discriminating how much you give me in order to know how much to give to you. And I remember sharing how in this type of love, both persons remain empty. They came with empty hands and they go with empty hands, because none of them was willing to actually put something on the table. So they both remain like a kind of beggars. This is also the one from the different stories that we learned from the society, because it's more in a theoretical level. It's more related to the thoughts too. So these different stories of the blueprints or the woman of my life are the ones that are determining this type of love in that level, which is still, as we mentioned in the previous level, is still attachment. Then we enter to another level. It's kind of another platform, because this is devotional love. And instead of being related to the mundane, it's more related to the sacred, it's more related to the divine. So it's like another step in these different levels that we explain about love. And it's going to be still attachment, because it's still on the dual platform. We start to develop this relationship with the divine, and because it's still in this initial stage, we need to ascribe different qualities, different characteristics to that which we want to love. So while I'm saying these words, I remember in different occasions how Prabhuji comments how if you put a person in an empty room and you say to that person, love, it is very difficult for the person from nowhere to develop this such a high state of love, because it's not even an emotion, what we're going to continue to see. So the person needs at least a pet, a tree, something that he or she can dedicate that love to. And he's telling us, from my humble understanding too, that this is one of the many reasons why we have a spiritual master, a guru, in order for us to be able to develop this love, which after is going to be the absolute. So, as I said, it's very difficult to just love without having something to love, something or someone. But then in this initial stage of devotional love, this is also why we have these different mantras, we have different hymns, we have all these beautiful songs, we have deities, in order to facilitate this development of love for the divine. Then we have, lastly, the transcendental love. And this is what we really mean when we are talking about love. Like, this is the love that we are referring to, this unconditional love. And for me, it was very interesting just to see or pay attention of the name of this level, transcendental. And what is it? What is it that we are transcending? And what we transcend in this level is this platform. There is no longer a lover and a beloved, as we saw in the devotional love, where there is still some separation, and however minimal it is, I still perceive myself as something separate. But the last level, it is revealed to us that we are love, that there is no one who experiences love and loves another. I, as a subject, love an object. And when I say object, I do not mean a thing, but it can be also another person. When I perceive myself as subject, everything else that is not me, the subject, then it's an object. So if I perceive this other person or this other object as separate from me, then in the transcendental level, this belief vanishes and we realize that we are love. And I learned to use this word more in a more accurate way, the word belief. And this is something that we've been seeing throughout our classes, because it's a belief. Even though it's, for us, it's our reality, it continues to be a belief. And this is the one that vanishes when we realize what we really are, and we realize that we are love. Continuing with the topic that we are discussing. In the last class, I mentioned that I wouldn't like us to stay at a theoretical level, because we have all these different definitions, we have all these different levels, and we can learn them by heart, but not really to allow them to touch us in a different dimension. So more than just staying at theoretical level, I would like us to embark on this adventure together of continuing to deepening what we are exploring, and not to stay in these definitions, but to also discover them in ourselves, which is what we're trying to do during the whole course. We are sharing these different thoughts, and something that I usually like to remind is the fact of this difference between understanding and comprehending, to actually be able to live from the things that we are learning. And I feel it's obviously one of the foundations of spiritual life, of the retroprogressive path, to be able to live from the things that we are in contact with our spiritual master while we're learning this beautiful path of the Kundalini yoga. Also is to let these things to touch us and to digest them, and to actually allow these things to express through ourselves in our daily lives, in our behavior, in the way we express ourselves. And to bring it more into a practical level, we want to find these different type of levels in us, to have the honesty, to have the courage to observe without the intermission of the mind, as we always recommend, and to be able to say, yes, I feel myself in this level, and then to continue towards the level of transcendental love. So Although this class separately can provide us with a lot of value, it is always advisable to watch the previous classes. This is our class number 24. So we are already in advanced stages of our course. And this time, in this opportunity, we're going to try to continue clarifying certain topics that we've learned in previous classes. And for that, the direction that we're going to take is to deepening into the master-disciple relationship, which is what concerns us. Despite being a foundation in the path, we have not had the opportunity to deepen in this topic. We have always emphasized that to undertake this path of the Kundalini Yoga, we do need to do it under the expert guidance of a spiritual master, of a guru. And in this opportunity, we're going to continue unveiling why. We're going to keep discovering why. And as I said, as I just mentioned, it's foundational for this path that we are undertaking. And I'm just grateful that we're having this opportunity to deepen more into this specific topic, which is one of the topics that I admire the most in undertaking this life. And we're going to continue to understand why. In the book Ishavasya Upanishad, in the commentary by Prabhuji, we find a very brilliant paragraph describing or explaining more about the master-disciple relationship and love. So I brought it in order for us to enrich this class with this paragraph. So let's read. Love is the basis of discipleship. Without love, surrender will not be genuine. Disciples' love must be so authentic that the master will be the center of their lives. They abandon everything for their guru. They renounce all their defenses until they reach the point of maximum vulnerability. Upon reaching unconditional love and total surrender, the master-disciple fusion takes place. Only in loving surrender, disciples melt like salt dolls in the ocean of the master and become nobody. Their surrender is like dying, because from that moment on, the master lives through them. Disciples become the shadow of one who is no one. That is, the shadow of someone who is the whole, manifested in a form. And that is only the beginning, because it will be followed by surrender to the unmanifested. Like a river flowing into the sea, disciples flow into their master. Like a silkworm, disciples die at the feet of the master to be reborn as butterflies. If a sincere desire to transcend yourself awakens deep within you, trust that existence will place a master on your path. For those who are interested in having more context of where this paragraph comes from, you can find it at the end of the Mantra 13. This is the book for whoever didn't see it. And what happened is that in this mantra we have a small glimpse of the attitude of a disciple. And this is why then Prabhuji takes the opportunity to explain more about this so mysterious relationship. I remember when we had our previous class, I mentioned a small part that we also find in the book Experimenting with the Truth, related to the master-disciple relationship. And it's he opens this amazing, brilliant article explaining how there are things in life that are made to be lived and not to be understood, and that we're going to miss the point if we try to put them in logic. And I think everyone can agree with me that, yeah, it happens. And it happens with different things. When we are in love, there are so many things that we cannot explain. And the master-disciple relationship, for whoever is listening and had the blessing of being in this type of so-called relationship, because if we have a chance to continue speaking about it, we will notice that it's not a relationship like the ones that we have with our parents, with our sister, with our family. It's not that type of relationship. So sometimes I see how he's not even using this word to refer to that phenomenon of the master disciple. And later, while we continue developing this paragraph, we're going to continue understanding why. But I feel it's very, very connected to the topic that we are discussing, which is love. That it's not something that we want to bring so much our thoughts and our preconceived ideas, but we actually want to let go of them in order to really experience what love is. And this is one of the things that we also discussed in our previous class, how our ideas about it can be an obstacle for actually experiencing transcendental love. So, as I said, this is the book. I always like to show it and bring it because I think the person, whoever listens to these classes, can enrich him or her with reading the full mantra, where we're taking this paragraph and we are bringing it in order to enrich what we are exploring. So I want us to study more about this paragraph. We can do a course, I think, only from that paragraph, but today we're going to briefly use it as an opportunity to go deeper into some of the topics that we saw previously, like surrender, like renunciation. And we saw these words in this paragraph, and we're going to very soon understand why. So we have here, love is the basis of discipleship. So it's the basis. It's without love, there is basically no discipleship. And it's exactly what the next sentence is saying. It says, without love, surrender will not be genuine. So you understand how important is this love. Without it, the surrender. Remember that we had our classes where we spoke about surrender. This surrender that we want to achieve cannot be possible without genuine love. Like the surrender, it will not be genuine without this love that we are bringing into the table, into all the ingredients in this beautiful recipe that the Kundalini Yoga is bringing to us. Disciples' love must be so authentic that the master will be the center of their lives. And while I'm reading this sentence, what I can remember the most, it says, it needs to be so authentic that other is the center of my life. And it reminds me to that feeling of dissolving, because the other is so important. And if I want to bring it to a more visual example, the mother, when the mother has her newborn, this is the most important. This is the center of her lives. Her needs are not so important as they were before having this newborn. Now my newborn is the center of my life, and I don't mind the different sacrifices or whatever I need to do in order to fulfill his or her needs. And then I am not so important. And it's this feeling like I have something bigger than me that I need to take care of. And something similar happens in this master disciple that we are bringing to the table today. They abandon everything for their guru. They renounce, and listen to the word, renounce. They renounce all their defenses until they reach the point of maximum vulnerability. So it's telling us, in order for us to reach this point, we need to give up our defenses. And it's a process. It's not something that today you say, okay, I leave all my defenses, that's it, I'm yours. It's something that happens organically in a process, as we saw in the class that we had about renunciation. I remember very well how we were speaking about the fact that it's something that happens organically, something that happens naturally, the same way that we pass from childhood to adulthood, and then we become elders, the same way that this process happens naturally. And the same toys that I used to use when I was younger, I don't use them in my adulthood stage. Then something very similar happens with the renunciation. It's natural, and it's coming from consciousness, not from a certain imposition or certain technique, but it happens naturally. And I remember very much this paragraph that maybe we can read. Not paragraph, it's a verse from the Bhagavad Gita. We discuss about renunciation for whoever is seeing this class for the first time. Like if you're coming here new, we discuss about renunciation when we spoke about the second center. I will leave a link to whoever is interested in going back to that topic, and whoever saw it if you want to refresh too. And I would like us to read a verse of the Bhagavad Gita that touched me very much in when we had the opportunity to explore about renunciation, that is telling us how when we have the blessing, when we have the grace of tasting something from the higher, then everything else falls naturally. Like things that used to attract us from the mundane, when we are granted this the most beautiful present, in my opinion, that is to be able to taste something from the higher, then they lose their brightness. And I want us to read from the book. Let's see. Visaya vinivartante niraharasya dehina rasavarjam rasopyapsya param drishto anivartate. The objects of the senses leave one who abstains from them, but not the desire to enjoy them. However, even this desire is lost in one who has realized the Supreme. The Bhagavad Gita, this is the verse, the second verse. No, sorry. It's the chapter 2, verse 59. 259. So, just to read again the verse, it says, the objects of the senses leave one who abstain from it, but not the desire to enjoy them. So I can bring a technique and repress my will to enjoy certain objects, but the desire that I have to enjoy them are still in me. But what happens to one who realizes the Supreme, who realizes the Divine? Even that desire disappears. So here we were speaking also about sex in these specific classes, how the direction is not to repress, because we already spoke a few times how repressing can make us or lead us to the neurotic direction, and how it's also related to violence. And one of the vows that we have in most of this path of self-realization is ahimsa, or not violence. So we don't want to bring it to the formula, if we can call it like this, but we want to do it through observation. And the Bhagavad Gita is coming to tell us that through renunciation we can sublimate all these desires that we might have. In this case, it was this pursuit of pleasure. And here, when we're speaking about renunciation in this book, where it says they renounce all their desires until they reach the point of maximum vulnerability. So it's interesting how it's using the word renouncing again. Upon reaching unconditional love and total surrender, the master-disciple fusion takes place. Beautiful how we're speaking here about a fusion, and we saw earlier how also when we spoke about transcendental love, there was also a fusion. There is no longer a lover and a beloved, but there is this realization that we are love. So I feel also this here when it says the master-disciple fusion takes place. But what are the things that need to happen before? And it says reaching unconditional love and total surrender. So these two things needs to happen first. Unconditional love, we spoke about unconditional love. Total surrender, we spoke about surrender. We spoke how in the path of the Bhakti Yoga, surrender is the last step on it. And we see how this fusion can take place only when we have these two happening first. Only in loving surrender, disciples melt like salt dolls in the ocean of the masters, and they become nobody. Their surrender is like dying, because from that moment on, the master lives through them. So here we have two things that I would like us to discuss. One is the fact that it's only in loving surrender. So it's not this so-called giving up or something that I can do with tension, with the control that we spoke about when we were discussing about the Manipura chakra. It's not something that I can impose, but only through this loving surrender we go back to the love, to this unconditional love, to this disappearance of ourselves. And then it says that their surrender is like dying. But what type of dying are we speaking about here? And I always remember many conferences and also in different books this topic is treated. And actually also in this same mantra before, it is explained also about the death, and I think we can read about it in order to understand actually which type of death we are speaking about. The death of the egoic phenomenon refers to the transcendental state in which consciousness is recognized. Different religions and spiritual paths use the term mystical death. The Jewish Talmud calls this as mitat neshika, or the kiss of death in Hebrew. In Sufism, dying before death is a conscious and voluntary death prior to physical passing. It occurs when we transcend our concepts of manifestation and non-manifestation. It means discovering that life or death are illusory ideas that obscure the simple reality that we are, always are, and always will be. So we saw in this paragraph, it's very well explained how we're speaking about this transcending this idea of being separate, this egoic phenomenon, and it's actually dying consciously, like the Sufism says, before the physical passing. So this is the dying that we're speaking about here when this fusion in the master-disciple happens. Several days ago, in one of the many blessed darshans that we have the opportunity to have with Prabhuji, we were able to hear more about this specific topic, the love in the master-disciple relationship. And it's because this is a topic that I've been busy with the most during the last 3 days, then it struck me a lot. And I remember when he was explaining that for many, the master-disciple relationship is considered to be destructive. Not only this relationship, but the spiritual path, the retroprogressive path. And he's confirming us and telling us they are right, because when you enter to this relationship, what you surrender is the subject. This thing that I believe myself to be, I surrender it to my guru. Remember also when we had our class about surrender, how we said we surrender this that we believe ourselves to be. And in other relationships, the direction is the opposite, is constructive. Both persons complement each other. They tell themselves different things in order to fortify this belief, the idea that we are separate. So it's constructive, and they are feeding both of them their ego. And in the other way, in the spiritual path, this is what we want to do. We want to be able to let go to all the preconceived ideas, to leave them, to drop them, in order to reveal what is already there, what we already are. So it's different directions, and this is why when people speak about the path to self-realization as a destructive path, this is why they are actually right. While I'm sharing these words, I'm remembering a phrase that I have close to me. I usually, when I hear or read a phrase that touches me on deeper levels, then I usually just try to have it close to me in order for me to see it and to continue to read it from time to time during the day. And while I'm speaking now about destruction, it reminds me to one that comes from Rumi. And the phrase is as follows. He's saying, your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. So again, love lies in us, or more than that, we are love. But we've been putting so many barriers, obstacles. So now our job is just to find them and tear them down, those walls that over time we have built. So these different conclusions from my father, from my mother, what my teachers installed in me, my sister, all these different beliefs are going to be demolished in this process, and then love is revealed. And I always like to bring, whenever it's possible, this phrase from Prabhuji that I love so much, where he's saying us that what you yearn for lies in you here and now. It's already here. And in this process of the Kundalini Yoga, when we learned about the tattvas, for example, we saw how we ascend from this plurality to unity. We have talked how the Kundalini resides in the Muladhara, so when it's awakened as a magnet, it's attracted to Shiva, who is in this seventh center, And we also talk about this fusion. Then it's the descent, and we are living in this world with consciousness because both Shiva and Shakti descend after. And there is this integration that we desire so much that happens. So we see here all the connection about what we just speak about these various that we want. We are always speaking about a process of, as negative as it can sound, destruction. We want to remove all these obstacles that we build around what we really are. And in this process of the ascension of the Kundalini, then we are allowing to let go of so many preconceived ideas. We spoke about this balance and imbalances of the centers. And in this process of discovery, of preparing ourselves as instruments, we are letting go of so many preconceived ideas. And we also speak about this analogy of the thermometer, that the raising of the Kundalini is letting us know our level of consciousness. And the higher we are, then the same way when we are in a tall building, the clarity is better. We can see more things as they really are, and we are not projecting or imposing something from ourselves. And we are towards the end of our class, and while we are deepening and going further, for me it's just so noticeable how the fact that we are only in the fourth center. This is the fourth center. We still have 3 more to go. But we see how we are in front of another step for this fusion that we just spoke about actually happens. And we saw in our previous classes from this opening, the balance and of this specific center. Only when this specific center opens, we can start calling ourselves yogis. But before that, we're only aspirants. So it feels like we are even in another step closer to becoming instruments. We always say how we send the invitation, and the divine is the one that decides if he wants to attend to it, if accept it. But what I wanted to point out now is the fact, as I said, this is only the fourth center, and we express and explore so many different aspects also related to the other centers in the Manipura. This control and the discipline, in the Swadhisthana, the surrender, the renunciation. In the first one, we also have this survival, and because it was related to the earth, how we can be malleable, flexible, or be very stuck in our ideas. So we see how each center has its own relevance, and how all of them are part of this puzzle, of this beautiful path of the Kundalini Yoga. And this is everything for today. In our next class, we are going to continue deepening into the different attributes that are related to this center, the different deities, the stones, the different organs also that are related to this center. Thank you so much for joining us today. Jai Prabhuji.